Hello everyone, this is Philosophy 72, week 5, and we start the second part of the class. Now, this time we'll focus on Spinoza this week and next week, and then Nietzsche weeks 7 and 8. Okay, so remember, we have so far done, right? Mainly we have spoken about Descartes and Leibniz, although we started the semester with the class on the painting by René Magritte. This is not a pipe, and also some pages from Antonio Gramsci's selections from the prison notebooks, right, on the idea of studying philosophy. So, in any case, make sure that you continue doing the discussion board entries, journal entries, especially. Both of them, but the journal entries I will grade with a letter grade, okay? So but both of them are important, and also the interaction in the discussion forum. um, and again, contact me with questions if you have any, right? So this is now what we are doing. The theme will be always the same throughout the course, right? The self established by Descartes, right? I think, right? The thinking thing, right? The thing which thinks, that's the self, the subject. I think, therefore I am. We saw that. Then we saw Leibniz with the notion of an individual substance which includes everything that has happened, is happening, will happen to, any substance, any entity, reality, or a singularity. I also introduced the word singularity, and then we spoke about the question of right, certainty as a type of a contingency, and contingency we saw is the opposite of necessity. Okay, necessity is what must be, contingency is what can be, but can also not be, right? So certainty becomes precisely, then there is a degree of probability that when it gets so high, 100%, it is no longer probable, but it becomes certain. Something will happen, something happens, but that's what certainty is, a type of a contingency and not necessity, because otherwise Leibniz says there would be no freedom, human freedom. Okay, so the question with Spinoza is difficult, right? Like Leibniz also was, and there are similarities and dissimilarities between precisely Leibniz and Spinoza. They live in the same period, right? More or less two different places, countries in Europe, but there is a correspondence, right, between them, and also they met at one point. But in any case, the main difference, to begin with that, and to highlight a word that you see in the syllabus for this week, is that Leibniz, just like Descartes, belongs in the tradition of, let's say, transcendence. You see this word in, is one of the key words in the syllabus for, right, the description of the class today. And then Spinoza, this is very important, belongs in the tradition of immanence. You see the word there with an A, not with an I, it's not imminence, immanence. What's the difference? Let's begin with that. Also because the first part of the ethics, I'm asking you to read some difficult, but I highlighted some moments for you concerning God. Concerning God. That's the first part of the ethics, but then I tell you, focus on the appendix at the end of part 1 of the ethics, from page 238 to page 243. Not many pages, right? So, but in any case, what is this immanence versus transcendence? Transcendence is basically the idea that God is beyond, right, nature, right, the God precisely creates, right? In transcendence, you have typically the paradigm of a creation. It's a creationist idea, right? God creates everything, right? From nothing or almost nothing, God remains outside, and is before the creation of anything, right? So that's transcendence, trans, beyond, over and beyond. Okay, there is this distance, infinite distance, really, between right? Not only humans, but everything that is created by God, the world, the universe, and so on, and God. You find that in Descartes, in Leibniz, of the philosophers we studied, but it is a long and dominant, perhaps, tradition. Right? I hope that this is clear. That's the metaphysical split. The split between, the finite. We'll go back to this with a later philosopher, Kierkegaard, and the infinite. Okay, in Descartes we also saw imperfection in the world of human beings, or in the world of beings in general, right? In the universe, and perfection in God. Although already with Leibniz, right, that was Descartes. With Leibniz, we saw that there are many kinds of perfection, right? It's not on God includes all of them. God is the greater, perfection greatest, but there are many. Everything is perfect the way it is. This is an idea that, in a different way, to an extent, will come back with Spinoza. Okay, so transcendence, I point this out again, is this division between the world, let's say, and God. Okay, this reality, right, and a higher reality. So immanence is completely different, right? It is the opposite. In immanence, there is no creation. There is production, there is unfolding of what Spinoza will call the substance, and I ask you to write about that in the journal. The substance, what is this substance that produces itself, that unfolds, that develops, right, that changes, right, and becomes what it is, and it is God. God is the substance. There is only one substance in Spinoza. It's no longer like with Descartes, the two thinking substance, extended substance, or the many infinite number maybe of individual substances with Leibniz. No, Spinoza says there is one substance, one. But this is not one in the way in which we think about the number one, whereby you have also 2, 3, 4, and so on. No, it's one, but there is not two. It's the only one, so it is not one in that sense. Okay. It is again another way of speaking about singularity, the greatest singularity, okay, if you will. But it is this one substance which is God, which is nature. God or nature. Then I will show you next time. We find this also, this very famous expression in part 4 when we get there next time. But in any case, God or nature means God equals nature. Okay, I will repeat this next time, but it's important. God or nature, God, comma, or nature doesn't mean or. You can choose either or. It means whether you say God or you say nature, you're speaking about the same thing, and the same thing is the one substance which produces everything, produces, unfolds, right? In unfolding, produces itself in a sense, okay, and remains within. That's immanence. Immanence is the idea that everything remains there, remains within, meaning what? That there is no without, there is no outside. But of course, this is, because we had to say this, but if there is no outside, there is no inside either. So the idea is that everything is, there. That again, there is no limit beyond which there is something different. There is, for example, no limit between the natural and the supernatural. There is no supernatural. There is no higher being in the sense in which we think of it in the tradition of transcendence. Okay, so immanence means everything remains within, so much so that at times people speak of Spinoza as a kind of, right, they say that there is pantheism, that he's a pantheist, check the word pan, then theism, right, theism, right, the idea that God is everywhere. To an extent, I mean, Spinoza is more perhaps complex than that. I mean, it's not simply the idea that everywhere you can find, anywhere you find God, but the idea is rather that, and you will find this at the difficult outsets of the ethics, where you see also this way of writing in Spinoza, right? With right, let me go there, definitions, then propositions, the axioms, and so on and so forth. But basically that's the idea. You have this one substance, God or nature. God equals nature. Then you have the attributes of the substance, which are the same as what for Descartes were the two substances. So you have thoughts and right, and extension, body, right? So these are attributes, properties, right? Attributes now of the substance, and then you have also the mode, right? So you find this in the definitions on page 217, okay, of your document. The modes are affections of the substance. So every, like the individual substance that we saw in Leibniz would be a mode. Everything, a book, a person, a tree, and so everything is a mode, right? So but that's basically the idea. But everything proceeds from the same substance, and everything is. Pay attention to this. We spoke about expression already in Leibniz. Everything is an expression of the same substance. Mode, MOD, and modification. Affection. We'll speak about affection more, even in a different sense. But I hope that this is so far clear. I know it's difficult. Don't be, afraid. Right? I mean, don't. Continue reading. Even I mean, I'm sure that there are things that are difficult, and we are not in a face-to-face situation, so it is even more difficult because of that. But again, ask questions, right, if you have any, but focus especially on the appendix, which is more certainly it's it's certainly more clear in terms of it deals with things that are perhaps also closer to us and so on. So, but in any case, I hope that this is clear, that there is keep this in mind as a framework. One substance, which is God, which is nature. God equals nature, right? Two attributes of this substance, right? One substance, two attributes, and then the many modes, okay? Modifications of the substance. It is, again, they are expressions of the same substance, okay? I hope this is clear. So, and this is the tradition of immanence, whereby things remain, like I said before, so to speak, within, and there is no outside. Okay, I hope this is clear, but this is ultimately what also we understand the universe to be today, with in a scientific sense, right? I mean that it is in infinite expansion, and there is no limits really to the universe itself. So in any case, you also have in the syllabus, I had to explain these two expressions, notions, concepts of natura, naturans, and natura naturata. You will find that as well, in before you get into the appendix. Again, I don't want to be too long, but you find this, let me tell you where exactly, on page So naturans is, and before I get there, proposition 18, for example, on page 229, tells you exactly God is the immanent, not the transitive cause of all things. Okay, so that's where you find one of the places where you find the word immanent, immanence, right, as well. And then I want to, okay, so it is on page then 234, and then we move into quickly into the appendix as well, right? Naturans, right, and naturata, ans, right, in this Latin expression is like ing in English. Okay, so the gerund, naturing, nature. And natura naturata would be, like ed, the past participle, form number 3 of the verb, okay, of so nature, nature, okay, so nature in the acts of producing itself, producing nature, naturing nature, naturans, and then produced nature, right? Nature after it is already becomes visible, manifest. Okay, so the idea is if we think about nature, we think about the trees, the mountains, the ocean, and so on, but this is what we see. This is the manifestation, the expression, and so on and so forth. But the idea is that there is something inside, again, so to speak. Think about that, the potency. Think about the power, not political power, power, potency, energy. The potency whereby things change, things happen, grow. Things grow. There is growth in nature, trees, plants, animals, and so on and so forth, including humans. There is this growth, there is this change, and this is something that we do not witness per se. It is still the same nature, nature in the acts of producing itself, so to speak, right? The potency whereby even, a tsunami, an earthquake comes, and so on and so forth, or flowers blossom, and then what we actually see, right? The nature that we usually understand as nature, as in other traditions, as the effect of some kind of creation. Here, it is actually the expression of that potency, that energy. Okay, I hope this is clear. But in any case, because this leads us into, and I don't have much time, but again, ask questions. The appendix, focus on that and write on that as well. Page 238, that's where the appendix begins, and page 239, Spinoza speaks against this, all prejudices, he says, that we have, and this is actually very interesting. Then he goes into the question of misconceptions that we have. A prejudice is when we judge something before we know, right? And then, think about how many of these prejudices, become so important in daily life, in personal, in people's lives, culturally, politically, and so on, right? And then, of course, also superstition, right? He will speak about superstitions as well, and the way in which we ultimately think about many questions, many problems in ways that are not adequate, right? Because we can have false. I mean, we saw that already with Descartes. Of course, we can have a prejudice. I mean, prejudice, a false opinion, right? I mean, we can think about something in an adequate way, true way, or in a inadequate way, which is a false way, right? I mean, I have so. And this is what then Spinoza will say when he speaks of a figment of the human imagination. Very often we make up a kind of reality which doesn't exist, and it is only in our imagination, and this will come back in part 4, because then We skip part 2, no, that is not important, we can't do everything. We will probably read just a few lines from the outset of part 3 next time, and then go to part 4 and read some pages from that as well. But these pages, especially like now for this week, again, this week 5, focus on the appendix. It's not too many pages, and it is more perhaps readable, that's what I meant to say before, than what comes before. But so it is here, for example, that he speaks on page 239 about misconceptions at the end of the bottom of the page, right? This misconception develop into superstition, right? And superstition, which is deep rooted, and then he attacks the idea that many people, accept, that nature or God or nature acts in the same way as we do, with an end in view, right? I mean, we do things by and large for a reason, right? Because we want some advantage from what we do. There is an end in view, right? I mean, I go to school, I want to graduate. I go to the store because I want to buy something, and so on and so forth, right? I mean, usually we do things this way, okay? But that is not the way in which God or nature operates, okay? So, and that is a misconception that then leads into superstition. And we still hear today, people saying, oh, the earthquake came because God wanted to punish people for whatever reason. The tsunami came, destroyed the city, many people died because God was upset, and so on and so forth, right? No, Spinoza says God or nature acts in a completely different way. It is the same as, the action is the same as the essence and the necessity of the action, okay? So things happen not because they are meant, and that's another then form of prejudice and of error or mistake, that they are meant to happen. No, they are not meant to happen. They happen because there are conditions whereby they can happen, and there is a great example, and then I close. I mean, I want to read this in the middle of page 240. When you see this line, nature has no fixed goal, and all final causes are, like I mentioned before, but figments, final causes, figments of the human imagination. Think about this, a final cause. I mean, people usually say things happen for a reason. There is also, I can't go into that really deeply, but there is there is a confusion here between the word, the two uses, if you will, of the word reason, or even more so cause, right? Because one thing is the final cause, that for which I do something, and the other is what causes something, what makes something possible, right? So they are not the same. And one is, by the way, one is called efficient, EFFICIENT, efficient cause, and the other is the final cause, okay? Often people confuse these two, and they confuse. I said this is another important point in Spinoza. They reverse the order of a cause and effect, and take the effect for the cause and the cause for the effect, and that's another source of a mistake. And that's what ultimately, the great illustration is about on page 241. I leave that to you to read. It's a great, and you can write on this, right? I mean, this example, right, of someone walking on the street, right, and being, killed by a stone that falls from the roof of a house. Okay, let me read a few lines. For example, if a stone, page 241, falls from the roof on somebody's head and kills him, by this method of reversal of the effect and the cause that I was speaking about, many people will prove that the stone fell in order to kill the man. For if it had not fallen for this purpose, by the will of God, how could so many circumstances have chance to concur? I mean, again, what is simply a coincidence is taken to be instead, the uh, something which has been willed and established that way by God. Okay, and so this is then, and he continues. It's a great illustration. I mean, even if you try to explain that the man was walking down the street because he had been invited by a friend, and the stone fell because there was a strong wind, and so on and so forth. They would still ask the question, why was the guy invited at that time? Why did the stone fall? Why did the wind blow at that time? And so on and so forth. And he says there is no end to this type of questions. And then, these people who use this argument, they take refuge. Ultimately, you will find that there in the will of God. And then he says, very strong remark, that is the sanctuary of ignorance. Okay, you will find that in the middle of page 241, very important page. So he says, no, this is not the way, and actually there is a great moment right here. He says, uh, again, people who seek the cause of cause and miracles and so on and so forth, he makes a very important political remark right now, and then I wrap up there, I close there. For these people know that the dispelling of ignorance would entail the disappearance of that astonishment, which is the one and only support for their argument and for safeguarding their authority. Another way of saying what everybody knows, everybody says, right? Knowledge is power. Ignorance is, and we, witness that all the time throughout history, but today, particularly, we see that in the age of information there is so much ignorance, and as another philosopher, Bernard Stiegler, who recently died, says stupidity, right? So it is this ignorance which makes possible the status quo to continue, the keeping of authority on the part of those who already had that authority. So they don't want to dispel this ignorance and so on. So in any case, this is very important. So it is up to us then to use reason and move, as we will see next time, from bondage to liberation. Also because next time we will focus on the question of the emotions, fear. And fear and ignorance are also very much connected, right? How many people do things out of fear, believing that they are acting freely? Okay, so we will do that next time, and of course, in order to change and move toward liberation and joy, we will see this next time. One has to, you know, grow out of this, as another philosopher that we are not studying would say, Immanuel Kant, Kant, just after Spinoza, a century after, in the time of the Enlightenment, in precisely an essay called What is Enlightenment? It is immaturity. People had to grow out of this immaturity, which is this right combination of fear and ignorance, this bondage whereby we ultimately believe in whatever we make figments of the imagination, and in prejudices, misconceptions, superstition, instead of looking at reality as such, which is the same. Reality is the same as perfection. We will see next time. I had to close here because probably my time is up on YouTube for now. Okay, so see you next time. Do your journal entries, discussion board entries. Contact me. Thank you.